went out and did your first venture, like you thought it was going to be easy. Was it? What were there immediate challenges? Like let's think about like that very first kind of leap of faith. What was that like?
Yeah, I think like the key thing was like I was your classic software developer, and I was like, oh well, building the product's the most important thing, and I think that was one of the hardest things, like understanding like a lot more goes into like launching a company. Like cool, you can have the best product, but you need like you do need sales, you need marketing, you need customer success, because like realistically, it all starts with the customer. So it's kind of that Wayne's World. If you build or whatever it is, if you build is it Field of Dreams, you build it, they will come. That's not really true.
Welcome to Next In, where we end up talking to founders, CTOs, and those crazy enough to start a new venture, like Paul Dorney. I'm excited today to dive into his background, where he's been able to help start multiple companies. He's gone through mergers and acquisitions. He's helped with turnarounds. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Shane. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, so I would love to just start with just getting to know you a little bit. Obviously, today, you are the founder and the CTO of Athos. Athos, I don't know how we want to call it, but
Whatever you want.
you
It's
probably say it better than I will, and I won't be
yeah,
able to repeat it. But eventually we're going to dive into like what you do as the CTO over at Athos. I would love to understand maybe what is different about creating a startup today versus the past. But before we dive into that, I just want to understand your origin story. Like, you're from across the pond, you're not from here. You became a software engineer eventually. What got you there?
yeah, no, great question. So like initially growing up, I was obsessed with computer games. So like to be honest, how I got into software development is I wanted to do games. Basically, if you've ever played Chat Manager, I was addicted to that, and I always thought I'd do that. And then as you got to see it build up and stuff like that, it got me hooked. And then as you said, originally from Ireland, and I software developer by trade, and then I came over and did the enterprise work in like Boston, working on the stock market and stuff like that, and then in predictive analytics, which is that now everything's AI, but it was kind of AI before AI. It was a lot of fun. And then that's where we'll dive into where I was crazy enough to say like, hey, you get to build products at these big companies, and it's really cool. And then for me, I was always like a bit of a risk taker, and I was like, hey, I wonder could I do it without all of the safety nets that come with a big company. And I'd read all the books and stuff, and I thought, hey, let's see if I can do it. And definitely was an interesting experience compared to what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So when was that moment where you were like, all right, well, I've worked for the man, I've worked for somebody else. I want to start my own. Like where did that itch begin?
I think it was I had moved down to Raleigh, North Carolina, and we had brought a product from like whiteboard all the way to market, and it was doing really well. And it was the first time because traditionally, you come in and you're a junior dev and you're kind of fixing stuff and you're working on it. It was the first time I got to see something from an idea in a room to it being used by like companies like Ford and stuff like that. And I was like, that is super cool. I was like, I wonder could I do that? And I think luckily enough, I knew so little that I thought I could basically, so I was kind of like that ignorance is bliss thing. And one of my friends had an idea, and we were like, hey, yeah, we'll do that. And like anyone else, it was like pivot, pivot, pivot. But that was the genesis, was seeing it done at the corporations basically, and being like, you know what, I
You're
bet
like,
that,
that's not so hard.
yeah,
That's
that's
not
not
so
bad.
hard. Like, obviously, there was probably some sales schmuck that got this through the
Yeah,
door, but the delivery part was easy.
yeah. I was like, oh, cool. So you just have an idea and you build this and you build that. And then it's going to sound mental, but like I was obsessed with the book and the movie The Martian at the time. And his whole thing is like solve the next problem. So I remember thinking, do I know how to do like everything? No, I'll just solve the next problem, and then we'll solve the next one and the next one. And that's how it started. The original team. That's how we kind of got it rocking and rolling.
Yeah, in your head, you're like, if I don't like this video game as much as I wish I did, I'm just gonna build a mod and then
Yeah,
I'll make the video game better. So you were like
exactly.
inspired by your childhood mod life, where you're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, well, let's just make a mod and then
yeah.
we'll figure it out. And maybe I'll do well, or maybe I will just be homeless for the rest of my life. Who knows?
Exactly. It was kind of easy because my thing was like, worst case, I end up back in Ireland, and Ireland's a cool spot, so I'll go back.
Yeah, I remember those days. That was one of mine where it was just like, all right, well, I don't like working for people and I have opinions, so I might as well just go try to see if these opinions mean something or not. So,
that's a good way.
so let me ask you this. So, like, when you went out and did your first venture, like, you thought it was going to be easy. Was it? What were there immediate challenges? Like, let's think about like that very first kind of leap of faith. What was that like?
Yeah, I think like the key thing was like I was, your classic software developer, and I was like, oh well, building the product's the most important thing. And I think that was one of the hardest things, like understanding like a lot more goes into like launching a company, like cool, you can have the best product, but you need like, you do need sales, you need marketing, you need customer success, because like realistically it all starts with the customer. So, it's kind of that Wayne's world, if you build or whatever it is, if you build is it Field of Dreams, you build it, they will come. That's not really
Yeah.
true. It's like cool, you actually have, there's so much more that goes into like starting, founding a company, and then like, leading people where you're responsible for their paychecks and stuff like that. And you become like a pseudo psychologist, mentor, while also trying to be like the lead developers and stuff like that. So that to me was probably the hardest. Like when we were ideating and coming up with the product, that was the easy part. But then you're out in the, once you launch and you're out in the world and like dealing with all those little fires that you just think, oh, will they ever stop? That was kind of that's kind of the more of the challenge basically. And then the other elephant in the room is, if you want to be a VC backed company, it's that how do you go out and secure those funds with growth, with an idea, where they're kind of betting on you and stuff like that. So that was kind of the challenges.
Yeah. And was that first venture, did you guys raise capital?
Yeah, we did. We ended up raising capital. It raised a few million in the end. We started with some seed capital, and then we had a small pre-seed round with local VCs in Raleigh, North Carolina, which helped us kind of expand. And then as we expanded to more cities, that's when we were on the kind of on the road show to raise the larger rounds.
What was it like for like trying to raise money for the first time? Because I have to imagine the first time you're like, I have to build like all of these things, and we have to have all of these things, and there's rumors that are like if you have a like sometimes a little bit of revenue is almost worse than no
Yeah,
revenue, right?
yeah,
And
no,
and and that's a huge catch 22. People are like, pre-revenue better than no revenue because then we get to make up this stuff. And
yeah,
so, but I'd be curious on your opinion on when you were first getting into raising capital.
no, exactly that. That's the dance that you're doing, and something as well we found is the different locations of where we were pitching. Definitely, we had to alter our pitch for that. The Northeast is very more numbers and kind of less story based, I suppose. Then West Coast, it's very much like more into the people. Like okay, cool, I like your idea, but do I love the team? So that's where I'd say like there's kind of a weighting where like a weight attached to it. And for me, the biggest kind of challenge initially was, we were probably in like a really unsexy industry. It was youth sports officials, kind of crazy. It was really a gig economy platform, but like we had our first vertical was youth sports officials, and everyone was like, "All right, cool. Like, is that
You're like,
really?"
how big is youth sports? Like,
Yeah, they're like,
don't you just hire the local kid down the street and
ex-
you pay him some money and then they ref your kid's game and you give him $20 to make sure that your kid wins? Like, that's
ex-
how it
ex-
works, right? So is there a
exactly. Yeah.
bribing mechanism on this platform? Just kidding.
Yeah, I know exactly, and that's it. They're like, so what the hell? Like, my kid plays sport, but like, where? And then so like, storytelling became the big thing of like, where does that person come from? Cool, they come from here, and then who's the person who sent them there? And it was basically like the taxi dispatch system. So then the good thing I will say is that the majority of folks that we pitched have either played sports or have someone in sports, so they understood it. But then the
Yeah.
bad thing was they were like, "How big is this really?" And then when you actually dive into the numbers, you're like, "Oh, whoa, it's a lot bigger than I thought." So it was probably ahead of its time. Where now everyone likes the unsexy industries because they're the ones that make money. This was 2016,
You're like, if you could have only said, we are the Uber for
yeah,
blank.
sports officials, and it's like that's exactly it. So that was kind of our hardest one, I suppose. And then obviously, as you said, as you go out in the pre-revenue, post-revenue, it's like a lot of times it's, hey, you can get to this door when you're pre-X revenue, and then when you get post that, you go to the next floor, basically. So it was trying to get in front of the right people at the right time who believed in like the vision and the team and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like over time, did you start to optimize your pitch for the location and understanding how that location was, or did you just start realizing, hey, I'm just way better at pitching this type of VC, so I'm gonna reach out to the how did you allocate your time towards like where you invested your pitches and how you were strategizing how your pitch was gonna get delivered?
No, great point. We definitely tailored our pitch to who we were pitching to. Whether if it was a West Coast pitch, it was very much about where it can go, the dream. Like the team, what we've done so far, all of that magic. And then on the Northeast, it was very much into the kind of metrics and the cogs, which are important on the West Coast too. But it's more. It was they cared less in my experience of like who we were, why we were doing it, where it could go to, and it's more like how much is how much does it cost to get a customer, what's the revenue, where's the growth, how are you doing, how do you land and expand. So it's very more operational, I suppose, Northeast. So we kind of tailored our skill sets in that pitch there, and then on the West Coast it was very much we had all of that stuff, but they really wanted to get to know us a bit more, I think, and that's where we did it. And for ourselves, how we put our time into it is we definitely initially we were like, hey, we'll pitch anyone anywhere. I think we did like 82 pitches. Um, but then we realized like, hey, not every investor, and it's even now here at this latest venture, is not every investor is right for your company, if that makes sense. So you're trying to find we
Yeah.
always use the example of like the good money, like who can connect you to more customers, find talent, who can like be a network effect for
It's
you
like,
versus just
how can I
capital.
accept capital and
Yeah,
also have a partner that's going to have leveraged assets, right? Because like
exactly.
sometimes those leveraged assets are almost worth more than the dollars that you're accepting to make sure
100%.
that you're successful. And do they have a vested interest
Yep.
or things in place to help you grow?
Yeah, exactly. That's 100%. Couldn't say it better. It's actually what they bring to the table. And
More
one
than
of the
money.
ones, yeah, and one of the ones I hadn't founded, but I went in as like an action CEO, CTO, I suppose at the time. We raised a large Series A, and that was exactly it. We were in a definitely a more attractive position than like say Silvo, where we had a lot of interest, and we actually got to decide who were the folks that would best kind of get us to that next level.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give somebody that today is like, I have this product, I have this idea, maybe I've got a POC, I've got some traction, I've got some LOIs, whatever, but like I'm trying to figure out how to pitch or where to pitch or like what basic fundamental advice would you give me?
It's kind of no different, I suppose, to folks if they were getting into like any like speaking in public as well. As one, it's always good to start. I always say like, and I got this from either a blog or a book, which is list all the VC firms that you want to pitch, or who you think would be aligned to you, and then you'll have them marked A, B, and C, and like basically cultivate your pitch and your story at the folks that you think like you have less of a chance of getting. So, because it does take a few reps where you feel confident and they can feel that confidence and stuff like that. That's what I would say is like start there, get out there, try and get in front of as many people as you can and actually get that confidence because that will help the questions you get asked, the pushback, like the TAM, stuff like that. That's going to help get your pitch really precise for when you go in front of the folks where you're like, hey, I really want this investor. This is the investor that's going to kind of help us connect to this market, connect here, etc. like that. And the other advice I would have is I had it after the fact is there is actually a really cool book that helps, especially if you're going into it net new and you've never read it, which is like The Secrets of Sandhill Road, which is it's just a cool one
Huh.
if you have never done it. It gives you some insights that you're like, oh whoa, oh whoa. It's like seeing a documentary of like expect this, expect that, stuff like that. So that I read it after the fact, and I was like, oh well, wish I knew
The
that.
Secrets of Sandhill Row.
So, yeah, it's a really cool venture capital book. So it's and it is more tailored, I suppose, to the West Coast, but it actually just
Yeah.
helps founders if you haven't done it before to not get discouraged, and it has some good anecdotes and good advice and stuff like that. So
Well, just
that's
like anything, it's just like how many times have we started something new where we weren't great at it at the beginning, and everything has a system of reps that you have to do, right? Like if you haven't
exactly.
ran a mile in 10 years and I tell you to go run a mile, like you might be on the floor panting. No different than if you're going to go stand in front of a bunch of people and pitch your baby, because at the end of the day,
Yep.
like especially for new founders, I'm like, this is your baby, but like I'm sorry, some people are gonna kick your baby. Like it's gonna happen.
Exactly.
Not
And they're
everybody
good.
thinks your baby's cute. Like your baby probably looks like a little alien, but like
Yep.
you think that your baby is the most beautiful baby on the planet, and that's okay. But through that process, like you're going to learn that some people see the vision and want to invest, and some people won't, and that's okay.
Yeah, you've said it perfectly. It's like some people won't, and that's okay. You shouldn't be discouraged. And the other part too is like even the ones who want to invest, like they're going to come back and they're going to ask for a different valuation. They're going to ask for a few things, and that's okay too. That means hey, they do see it, but like no one's just there to throw money at you. They need to get their returns as well.
Yeah. So like once you raise funds and you're like now you're in the position to hire. And I don't know, like maybe you're doing that now. I know that you're 6 months into your current venture and maybe hiring's on the roadmap. Like, how have you identified as like your strategy when you're thinking about headcount, when you're thinking about bringing on the first few or the first many? Like, what is your strategy as you get ready to build?
Oh, great question. And it has evolved over time. With Silbo, my first venture, we were very lucky. One of our mentors kind of told us, there's a thing that's like not possible to measure, like I suppose is the grit, but there are certain things you can do to like identify it, whereas like for us, we were a sports tech startup. So a lot of it was, hey, we wanted folks who understood the space, but might not have been, in the big three, basketball, basketball, football, baseball. It's like, hey, were you on the rowing team? Where you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting on a cold thing, and you've got that like get up and go. It doesn't necessarily have to be sports; it can be anything. Trying to invent for the first few hires, it's trying to identify folks that are comfortable with being uncomfortable because stuff changes every day. There's not, like, well, you'd love it to be all buttoned up, like chaos happens at all times where, hey, you're like the dog who's chasing the bus. Sometimes you catch the bus and it's like, hey, we've got to pivot everything. And it's like, hey, yesterday we were doing this. So you have to find folks that aren't so rigid and structured. And then also like a really hard thing to do is identify talent because, you're probably not going to be able to pay as much as the kind of big wigs in the market, but you're looking for folks who want to grow. And I always say to people, like, we should be rocket fueled for your career. Our job is to make sure that we level you up, and then our job then is to retain you after we level you up. And on the current hiring phase and how that's changed is at the early stages, I still think that's important. You need to find those folks who are super into it because joining a startup is a whole different thing, right? It's like some people like to go to the beach and some people like to go to the mountains. Like it is genuinely a different thing. And then as you're growing at some of like the PE backed firms or the larger firms, when you're hiring people in, it's important. I always think to hire for the stage that you're going to and the stage you're at. I've seen it both ways where we've hired folks that would have been amazing for pre-seed, but now we're at a Series B level, and there's more structure, and they find it very hard. And then the opposite, where maybe we're at a Series B stage, and we're bringing in folks who are more of a DE or established company, and they find it hard to be like, well, at my previous place, everything like this was built, and it was all perfect, and I basically inherited a system, and then I'm like, they were probably way better at managing a pre-built system, but we were still in that, hey, we need 60% builders, 40% managing sort of stuff. So I do think it's important to identify like the talent for the stage you're at and what skill sets they come. And then I know folks have always looked at me like I'm nuts because I always say it too, is like me included, as the founder, like we scale out at a certain stage, like there
Yeah.
is this, and I always joke like for my first one is like, hey, I think now I can scale out at this stage. And then as I got more experience, I'm like, oh, cool. I think now it's a further down stage that I scale out, if that makes sense. So for me, for hiring, it's identifying the person who's right for that stage of your company, but can push you to the next stage, if that makes sense.
Well, give me an example of a time where maybe I don't know, hired the wrong person, and why were they the wrong person? And how did you identify that? And what did that cost you?
Yeah, no, great question. I think something that pops into mind was it wasn't like at my own startup. It was when I had gone into a company that was in hyper growth mode, and we had just gone past kind of like the all hands on deck, let's get it all done. And we were moving into a more mature phase. And I had hired someone who was kind of your traditional, like, would be an amazing jack of all trades developer, could do a bunch of different stuff. But as our team now was like, 60 to 70 developers, we needed more ownership, deadlines, accountability where it comes to like actual structure rather than being like, hey, we have a problem, and they're genius and they can take it and do it without communication or without stuff. And it would come like the classic kind of builders who love unstructured play, which is brilliant at the start or whatever. But for us at the time, we had done a few M&As and we needed someone who could actually sit over a department and own it. And basically what had happened was they became disgruntled because, what they loved to do was no longer like the kind of 80% of their job. It was still there, the 20%, but we needed them to move more into like an ownership management style versus a lone wolf. And that just wasn't their skill set. And at the time for us, we didn't have the space for them to be that continued lone wolf, if that makes sense. So we ended up chatting about it, and we've because they'd been like a solid contributor and stuff, we figured out a way for them to kind of exit gracefully under their own kind of decision. Basically, they realized like, hey, I prefer earlier stage than the stage we're going to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like I can work on a million things. I can wear a lot of hats. I can raise my hand to work on projects that are outside of my team, outside of my scope, learn something new on the job. And it's like, well, it's not why you're here anymore. Like you're not,
Yeah, it's like
we're not like we're not paying you to learn the rapid iteration things and the PO. Like you've got, we just the customer needs this. Like
yeah, exactly. It's
we
kind of
need
like, hey,
this, and we have this deadline. Like we don't have this anymore. And
yeah,
it's like, well, what do you mean you
exactly.
don't have this anymore?
Yeah, it's like, hey, we need this, this, and this, and in this lane, they're like, ah, well, I want to go play over here today, and it's like those days of, they're still there on like a certain point in time because it's important that people work on projects they like and stuff as well. But it was more the structure was they preferred like the pre-seed and seed
Yep.
stage versus the Series B
Well, then you've
stage.
got those people that are like, I want to know the name of everyone. I want to have access to everyone. And I want
Yeah.
to like, and that's important to them. And it's like, if they're at a much larger company, it just doesn't work that way anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, well, you see that as well, where especially when you're a smaller company, everyone's involved kind of in every decision. But then as you grow, like you're still involved, but you're just told more because departments have grown past,
Yeah.
the what is it, that Amazon thing, the pizza party, like where
Yeah.
everyone knows
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. Now there's 30 people in that department, so you can't know everything basically. So you have to like go one level above.
Yep. And then you start talking to people about like, well, you need to do this because this core system of record tracks it for the next person. And they're like, well, there's not a next person. This is this is I am this.
Yeah.
This is me. Like, we don't need somebody that can know what I do. That means they replace me. And they're like, yeah, that's a good thing. And they're like, no, me being replaced, not good. And it's like, well, no, no,
Yeah.
no. But like when you level up, like eventually somebody needs to step into your shoes. It's like, well, no, 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 no. And that is very common, right? And you start seeing, and so it's like that moment you start seeing that resistance, and you do start seeing yourself growing while other people are going to ultimately exit out. And I would say for me as a founder, I have found myself struggling with that at times, where it's like this person helped me start the business, but
Yeah.
like how do we get this person out as we grow? And it's not for the detriment of them, and it's not for the detriment of the business, but both sides are trying to grow. It's just
Yeah.
they happen to be growing in different directions. And I don't know if you've found that as a founder where that's been a struggle, but I know that was a big learning curve for me at one point, which was
No,
like, oh, I have to let go of one of
100%.
my favorite people. Like they're
Yeah, and
literally one of my
that's it.
top performers, and they're just not going where we are needing to go.
Yeah, and it's the hardest thing because, especially as you said, they helped you start it. They've gotten you to this level, and it's kind of that uncomfortableness, as you said, is like two roads diverge. And then a lot of times, in retrospect, they're way happier. And now they've got more skills. So when they go back to the part that they love, they're even stronger than they were, basically.
And you'll get that text
Yeah.
1 year, 2 years later, where they like I had that the other day. One of my old recruiters, which I was talking about, that kind of like grew out of us. It's just like he texted me the other day, and he's just like, I just landed this massive deal. Never would have been, if it wasn't for you and working for you, I would have never have done that. And it was like that was like a really cool moment, even though there was some bitterness 2 years ago about that
Ex-
decision, right? But 2 years
no,
later, it
exactly.
was like the text was like, hey, I just thought of you. I used this thing that you taught me, and it just landed me the biggest deal I've ever had. It's like,
That's awesome.
love that. I love that for you.
Yeah, that's the best. That's actually the best. Like regardless of like starting, raising, all of that stuff, or selling, actually helping people in their career is always like the most valuable.
Sometimes that's why I feel like I do what I do. Like that's why I am a founder, is like for those stories to eventually come back and to be in my world. But when you again, I kind of want to go back to like as you think about growing and as you think about hiring, especially engineering, and engineering has dramatically changed, and everyone's experiencing it, especially like with AI. And there's controversy around, should I be able to use AI during the interview process? Should I not be able to use AI during the interview, during the process? Like, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
No, that's so on topic at the moment too, because it is really hard. Where traditionally, and I've gone through it myself back in the day when I was interviewing, where you would do the live coding sessions, and I never thought that they worked well because you're like it's like being asked questions under pressure, like I can't even spell my name right now. But yeah, and like the take home tests have now been eliminated realistically with AI, so it's kind of that chicken and the egg. You're like, I need to know that you know the fundamentals and that you're open to leveraging the AI tools because once you start, hey, I want you to leverage them all to move as fast as we can correctly. But it is that thing that I'm having a challenge with, kind of as we're interviewing folks for roles, is how much of it is, Claude in the background them reading off versus do they have those core fundamentals? Because I do think, like, if you have the core fundamentals, perfect, then you can kind of jump into, because all the tooling will change over time and stuff like that. But as long as you have the core fundamentals and you're able to understand, oh wow, it's gone way off track, basically. Like, I don't expect anyone to be, handwriting code anymore and stuff like that, but it's being able to
Yeah.
structure it, architect correctly. And, you know, when you read on the market, that's where it seems like it's going to be too, of like, long term with agents, and you're basically managing your agents. So that to me is something I'm still trying to figure out as well, is how do we
Yeah.
make sure that we are checking that? And it's a hard one, basically.
Yeah, I mean that was something that I had a conversation with, even not even for an engineer, but for recruiters. Like I expect a lot of the new recruiters that we hire to be leveraging AI tools and how to use them. And one of the things that I had on my team that was the pushback was like this, like I had somebody go do a sourcing project. I was like, Go find a company, let's build out a list, let's understand what we're looking for, why we're looking for it, and then I want you to build me a list of 50 people, and I want you to tell me why they're good for this job. And they came back and had like this beautiful presentation, totally awesome, and everything was absolutely correct, and all 50 people were like absolutely perfect. And somebody internally was like, I think they just use ChatGPT and Claude to do all this. I don't know if they actually know this. And I was like, well, if our goal is to get them to find the right people, and they found the
Yeah,
right people, does it matter? And they're like, well, yeah, it matters. Like, could they find them on their own? And I was like, well, it just depends on what does finding them on their own mean today. Because to me, finding them on their own using Claude or ChatGPT, that is a very viable function. Like something went out and found it, and they built the list, and they can look at that list, they could QA it, and they
yeah,
did the quality assurance, and they're like, yeah, these are perfect, and these look good. And maybe there was like 10 other people on that list, and they deleted those. I don't know. But like the only thing that I could do now is go, well, why? Explain your thought process. How did you get here? What was your prompt? What did you use? How did you understand this? What were your edge cases? Like, help me understand, like, were there redundancies that came up? What did you run into that was a problem? I don't know if you guys are doing the same, but like for me, I'm like, I like AI.
yeah,
It made me give them more complex tasks than I used to give them as a part of the interview process. But then it came back with outputs. And then once I challenged the output and I just go like, explain to me how you got here. Ideally, there's some short-term recall where they remember enough of the thing that they might have just done.
yeah,
And I saw the output of the thing I asked for, and then I get them to explain their process, and I know what I would do, and I can see it, and I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. I don't know how you guys are doing your interviews and that, but that's
no,
how we started doing them. Where it's just like I want leverage tools. I want more, call it an AI recruiter, if you
yeah,
will, but like I want them to be able to explain their math, which if you ask Shane back when he was like in middle school, if he was willing to share his math, I probably have a lot of teachers with some complaints that were like, he said no. And I was like,
yeah,
well, I hated showing my math, but now I get it. I get
yeah.
it. Like the full
No,
circle moment.
you've nailed it, and that's exactly what we've been doing. One of the things we've tried is, like, as we're doing like the kind of chatting with them and we give them a problem, we're like, hey, you can use as many AI tooling as you want. Talk us through your thought process. So it's kind of probably no different to back in the day, the whiteboard
Yeah.
interviews, where you'd have to talk it through. And we've had some good success with that as well. But still, I think it's one that, continuing to tweak and learn and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's like, how is AI slop getting created? How is like, if we were to push this code, like, what are some of the things that it's going to cause? Like, what are the
Yeah,
problems that it's going to cause in the future? How do we mitigate those problems eventually? Um, and so I would assume you're like, let's understand this. Like, do you
yeah.
understand what's actually happening here?
That's exactly it. And as we onboard folks and they learn it more, it's like, hey, as you're working on a feature, we need to understand why you decide. Like, as long the outcomes are the most important, obviously, but it's like the process. Why did you decide to do that? What was the impact? What did you learn from that? And then, as we feel more confident with them, we kind of let them off into the wild. Then, so we've had
Yeah.
some good success with that
Well,
so far.
let me ask you this, Paul. What are you guys hiring for right now? Like
Yeah.
your early stage, like somebody jumps on here and they're like, I really like Paul. He's got a cool accent, and I can hear him like he can manage me. What are you hired for?
So the big one we're hiring from at the moment, I suppose, like everyone, is AI engineers,
Yeah.
which is an amorphous term, I know, and they're like the saying back home is like they're like hen's teeth. They're just they're hard to find and stuff. I know I reached out to a few contacts there recently. I was like, "Hey, do you have anyone in your network you'd like vouch for?" And they were like, "Hey, man, no offense. If I find one, I'm hiring them."
Yeah.
So that's definitely what we're looking for. It's someone because what we're doing is basically it's a sports tech where we're connecting everyone's data, and then our AI is basically making it easy to make actions and insights to save coaches and GMs time. And so for our person that we're looking for is someone who can come in and kind of help tweak the models, build them for sports specific stuff, different verticals that we're in, recruiting,
Yeah.
performance, S&C. So it is a really cool opportunity for someone who likes sports and AI, or you don't even have to like sports, but
But if somebody came from a Second Spectrum, or they came from a Sports Genius, or one of a Gum Gum, or any of these companies, these would be
oh
really
yeah, it would
exciting.
be they would love it basically, and that's kind of the biggest challenge we have at the moment. So and because they're in such high demand, it's probably similar to yourself when you gave that recruiter a sourcing tool. Is like going on and trying to find them, and you're like try to like tie ropes together, and that famous saying of like the good ones are never looking. So you're trying to just, hey man, how's it going? Would you be interested in this role? So that's what we're doing at the moment. So if there's any AI engineers out there, hit me up at paul@athos.ai.
Are you guys on site and local,
We're fully remote.
remote?
So,
Okay.
yeah, fully remote. And we're kind of doing that classic, once a quarter we all get together. But I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. We're mainly East Coast at the moment. There's some in Boston, North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., and stuff like that. But it can be anywhere,
Okay,
realistically.
so I have to ask, just because we've got to end this on like a note of just getting to know you a little bit better, but like sports team, man, just a couple of rapid fire questions. Favorite sports team?
So, Munster Rugby would be my favorite sports team, but then for my sins, I'm a soccer fan and I'm a
Okay.
Derby County fan. If anyone likes the championship, yeah, or yeah, so it's where my
Heck yeah.
family lives. So I'm a Derby County fan. The Rams, even though we just got new investments, so you might see them in the Premiership soon.
I'm supposed to be going to a Nashville SC match tonight myself, but
Next,
my wife is making other plans. I've got a pregnant wife, so I don't get to go, and I feel like I'm stabbing myself in the heart right now. I'm a season ticket holder for Nashville SC, so
oh,
like
nice,
soccer is one of
nice.
my favorite. But she reminds me, but we also have a game on Sunday. She's
Oh,
like,
so that's okay.
we
That's
got
okay.
two games this week, and she's like, you could give one up.
Yeah, and congratulations to the both of you.
Thank you, thank
When
you,
is
thank you.
when's the baby due?
January. So
Nice,
first
nice.
kid. So I have
That's
not
good.
yeah,
Nice.
six brothers, three sisters, and I've got like 20 nieces and nephews, but no children of
Nice.
my own yet. So we'll see.
Some soccer jerseys coming your way. I'll get you a Derby County one. We'll start them young. We'll build a fan base. Watch
My
this
wife
space.
my wife is Brazilian, so like I'll
Oh,
be
nice.
honest, I would love to wear a Derby shirt
Yeah,
just because like every second I'm wearing anything other than a Brazil or a Sao Paulo shirt or a Corinthians, like she like side eyes me.
I
I'm
love
I'm
it.
still I'm still trying to get her into like just straight up Nashville SC, but she's
Yeah,
like, man, it's not my team. And it's like,
that's
well,
the problem. Sao
it is
Paulo.
now.
Yeah, growing up. Yeah, I used to love them growing up. They always had some of the best players coming through.
Yeah, she's a really big Sao Paulo fan. Her mom's Corinthians. Favorite TV show that you're watching right now?
Watching right now, I just started a new one that actually really grabbed me the other night. Is Lucky on Apple. That new one with and have you seen it? It's a heist
Nuh.
thing. It's really cool. Yeah,
I'm
she's
also watching a heist show, but not that one. Looky,
nice. Which one are you watching?
Money Heist. I had never
Oh,
seen it. It was
I
I'm
love
on
that.
season four.
That's
It's
amazing.
awesome.
Berlin is in the
Berlin
first
is such a
uh,
character.
is
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, I think you'd like that Lucky one. It's brand new. I think there's like 3 or 4 episodes out, but it's got a bunch of folks in it. Timothy Oliphant's in it as well. Big fan of Justified back in the day. He's in it, but and still it's still coming together. What's happening in it, but it's really well done. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. And so we had some book recommendations, we had some movie recommendations, and if you're looking for a new role and you're a AI software engineer and you want to get into sports tech, we know who to
Right?
call.
We're working with a lot of pro teams as well, so you get to do a lot of fun stuff. So it's cool.
What is the easiest way to get a hold of you? Let's say somebody's interested. How can they get a hold of you and what can they do to put their best foot forward?
Oh, cool. On our website, there is a contact form, but you can also hit me at paul@athos.ai. And the best thing I think is just give a little blurb on like background and then any projects you're proud of or anything like that, basically, and what's your interest level, what you've done in the space, even if it's personal projects, how you're excited to work on it, and from there, then I'll happily jump on a call, chat to anyone.
All right, awesome. So, like Paul said, if you are looking at getting into sports tech, send him a LinkedIn, apply on the website, put your best foot forward. Otherwise, Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today, and looking forward to staying in touch. And I'm really
Yes.
excited to see how things grow.
Cheers. Thanks very much. A lot
Uh,
of exciting things coming. If you're into the Scottish football, we're going there soon.
I'll have to check it out. I'm not into Scottish football myself, but I'll check it out.
Cool.
All right, Paul. Well, really appreciate it. And to everyone else, do all the things, I suppose, the likes, the subscribes, the hit the button, comment your favorite sports team, whatever you want to do. Otherwise, until next time.